Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I will be showing you my CIS-25 presentation final. So basically what I did, it's basically a video game. I always wanted to try and do a video game in C++, and since this was pretty much my final, it ended up being a very interesting and challenging final for the next pretty much 2.5 months. Aside from working on C++ assignments and all that, this is my very first project. It was kind of frustrating because it wasn't an A and B process as I thought it would be. There was like multiple ways of going about it. There was multiple times where I was just stuck on certain lines of code, and this is pretty much going through this presentation. Uh, each number is like a slide of how I went through like my final. So this is pretty much just like the guidelines of what I went by for me. So for me, it was like a three-step process: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Finding the inspiration, and then coding into the project. So it's just doing what I needed to do, and then obviously the end is just finalizing and building the project properly and seeing if it could work. So going into the first part, find the inspiration was just like looking at a video, seeing what I could find, and making the game that I wanted to make. Of course, there's a lot of ways of going about it. There's a lot of different games, but I finally settled down and found a video for me that was pretty much a space shooter. Well, not space shooter, spaceship shooter. But it was just like looking and listening from a video. It was just like, oh, that's really cool, and like the code behind it was just, it was cool looking at it from a different point of view, but like going about it and actually typing it up and going using a code that was originally built by someone else and just tweaking it, it was just like, wow, this is kind of not necessarily annoying, but it was just a bit tedious because I'm often inputting the same variables over and over again, but with a new line and just slowly adjusting it and making multiple CPP files, which is pretty much like C++ files, or files in C++, and then making headers for those custom variables and classes and different things. And then for the middle, it's just getting into the code. Like I said before, just pretty much a majority of my time doing it, which is examining, tweaking, and then making new files constantly and trying to figure out the building blocks of making the game. Of course, there was like a folder for resources such as images and other minute things, but this is pretty much the middle and trying to create a project. And then the end, towards my finalization of the project, I ended up downloading a couple more files, tweaking those to make it compatible for my video game and my desktop, and making sure that after I build it, the video game in Microsoft Studios 2022, I was able to run it and make sure that everything was working fine. So assignments can only get you so far. It's up to you for understanding them. For me, I feel like this is a really true thing, and hitting a deep root core for like, I guess, developers of any kind in general. It's like you go and do something new, and then you figure out, okay, what can I do? What resources can I like implement as far as just like what is there to work off of? Of course, there are multiple videos that are having different ways and different functions and different like what can you glean knowledge from? It's like looking at a like for instance, if you were to go to websites like Stack Overflow for like explanations of like, okay, this code does this, and this is the reason why it does it, and stuff like that, and giving examples and stuff. For me, I'm just like, I really need a lot of content to go off of, so that way I can understand. And as far as trying to make a video game, my why was pretty much it was coming from an outside looking in, a learning experience, and like at least giving me an idea, both technical and like the artistic feeling, because I really do like playing video games. I really do like trying to figure out how video games tinker in the background, the mechanical side, and the coding aspects. I really do like doing this sort of thing. It's just that having so many lines of code, it can really get overbearing really quickly, especially if it's all summed up in your main file, otherwise known as your game layer file. Um, I struggled, stopped, moved away, but I came back stronger, basically saying that I had a lot on my plate in sort of a short amount of time, which was pretty much 2 months. Hi, Soshi. How you doing? But it was it wasn't necessarily a big idea. It was just that I was just getting easily frustrated, and I just tried to keep going through it until I was mainly just done. Um, Early on with the CPP files and the .header file or .h files, otherwise known as header files, I was just going through the guidelines of a person on GitHub named Meme Night. It was just going through his files, looking at his files, and looking at like hundreds and hundreds of lines of code for just a simple game to work. It's crazy how much like I had to go through in order for something as simple as a 2D spaceship shooter game to work. And I was just like, I feel like I'm an imposter at times because like it's just you don't expect yourself to have anything to go off of, or you don't expect yourself to actually make like take something from someone else and make it into your own. So like even tweaking it a bit, like adjusting, I don't know, like the render timing, or adjusting the space for your ship, how adjusting the health, how much health you have, adjusting the bullets, adjusting the sound, stuff like little stuff like that. I feel like it wasn't necessarily enough for me to call it my own because obviously the original person, Meme Night, who created this application, who created this game, I feel like I was trying to compare myself to someone else who was obviously 30,000 times better than me. And it was just I feel like I was ashamed of myself just trying to compare myself with someone else that's huge. But at the same time, I managed to push through it and I managed to get it done. And as soon as I showed my teacher, she was pretty happy with the results, and I was really happy with the results. And she was like, "It's okay to feel like this. Not everybody's gonna say like." There's a lot of times where you fail, but at the same time you learn, and the fact that you can take you can take certain aspects and assets and resources from someone else, but as long as you build them into your own, like for instance, I'm making another video game. It's going to be text based. I'm completely doing that from scratch, but I'm also learning from an LLM, an AI such as ChatGPT. I'm trying to branch out and make something of my own. So it's just like, as long as you can turn it into something that you think will be that you would be proud of is pretty much a direct message. Um, so pretty much the challenges that I face is don't really rely on videos alone because after all, your questions aren't going to get answered if you don't understand something. Um, and then other than that, it's pretty much like getting easily frustrated because at the end of the day, all you can do is rely on yourself and you can't really rely on others unless they have like a website to go to and you're able to answer those and you're able to ask the questions and they're able to answer you like within a day or two. Other than that, it's pretty much just like what really can you do? And it's hard to just try and focus in a negative headspace because you're obviously trying to make something of your own, but at the same time make something that's really, really small but really, really cool. So it's just like, oh yeah, someone's outside playing music. But besides that, it's so, what's the word? It feels imposterous, but at the same time, it's um, just try and make something of your own. No one really cares about you taking someone else's. As long as you give them credit, I feel like it should be applicable. But as long as you turn it into your own and add even more assets, add even more gameplay, something that could be like, oh, this person did this, and I added onto it, and it could possibly look even better now. That's pretty much the end goal of what I'm trying to say. So the uphill climb in trying to make video games. How I avoid complexity into understanding what I need. Trying to wrap an idea, it doesn't have to be a big idea, it could be a small idea, but trying to have something manageable and within the scope, and then you could possibly scrap the project and have something else in mind. You know, not every project is going to come into fruition, not every project is not going to be finalized. Every project has an end date, or a start date, and possibly an end date, or possibly a scrap date. And it's just like, whatever you feel like doing in that time could possibly be scrapped for another project. And it's just like, as long as you can find inspiration, I think is what I'm trying to get at, then you should be good. Step two, after coming up with the idea, ask LLM, basically AI, or other real people for the advice. Always remember that feedback is important. The fact that I kind of shied away from this beforehand when trying to talk about my video game and how I was trying to create a video game, I shouldn't have done that. But a couple of my friends did give me advice. A couple of my instructors did give me advice about like trying to always ask for help, even though if they're not in the related field, even if they possibly don't even know anything about the video games or the video game industry. It's just that it can certainly help when the instructor or your friends or your peers or whatever are giving you resources for you to glean off of. Stack Overflow for like information and sources, LLM, ChatGPT, obviously the LLM. Um, it's basically AI. It's just like a way of saying it's just like you ask a question in the browser, and then it gives you an answer. It gives you a vague answer, but it gives you like what you need to do. And it's just like, oh, okay. So I can just add this feature somewhere within my line of code. And it's just like, not quite, or yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, that's doable. And that's sort of like what I've been doing for some of these past assignments. It's just like, how do I make this work? Or how do I make this fit? Or what kind of like, for example, my new video game, how can I make a player UI render properly while also keeping my inventory and making sure that everything fits and perfectly in the background. and it gave me sort of a step-by-step process while also updating my code and making sure that everything is efficient and looking nice. And so I'm very thankful for that. And then step three is like whenever you're asking AI, make sure you understand what kind of question you're asking, and make sure you understand the output, the answer that it's giving you. And without that, it's pretty much you're just doing a copy and paste function. You're just the copy person, and you're just copying what the LLM is giving you, and it's not gonna work. But I mean, if you want to do that, I mean that's fine. But it's just like for me, I do understand a good amount of what I'm asking, and I do understand what I'm getting. Like whenever I ask like, um, for instance, how can I make uh, bullets travel slowly, and then it will like spit out data about how bullet time and the pixels and the dimensions of the whatever I need to figure out, and then it would implement that in code, and then I can just go off of that example, and then I can just use that example to pretty much make a whole list of code, and I would be able to use that and just pretty much make either bullets slower or bullets faster, depending on the dimensions of the window when it renders properly and builds properly into the game. All right, so the good, the bad, and the okay. So it's pretty much just like a process of the green, the orange or yellow, and then the sort of like tangy red, I want to say. So I had two positive outcomes, pretty strong. Um, it's just understanding the custom-based libraries and variables, inputting them, seeing what they do, how they're set up. Obviously in the beginning of the code, you will have your custom libraries and and like within each like region or whatever, you'll have the variables that are obviously defined by the libraries and stuff, and making sure that everything is nice and manageable. Um, and then like how effective like my learning outcome was, obviously from 87% to 100% out of 100, uh, tweaking, editing, and compatibility with someone else's code. I felt like I was pretty strong with that. I understood what I needed to adjust, what I needed to make compatible with my Windows desktop. So I feel like that was an 81%, so it was still pretty high. Obviously, not completely 100. What could possibly be improved for me? Um, Not getting frustrated when things didn't really go my way, and like files and code wasn't really properly building the way I expected it to, even though I had pretty much gone through the guidelines of the original person's code. 64% out of 100. Another one, this is something personal, but using things like JavaScript or CSS, text-based style font, or HTML, stuff like that, could possibly be much more effective rather than C++. But overall, games are usually made with C++ because obviously um, you have game engines like Unity and Unreal that go off of C++, and sometimes even Python, but that's a whole different mess. But for me, right now, I'm learning about I use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But when like a little bit before that I started doing my new project, I really didn't really know anything at all other than C++, even though C++ for me is a beginner stage. So this is sort of a 45% out of 100. Not it's less than 50, so it's kind of eh. And then lastly, some things that I don't understand, going off of someone else's code, um, and then trying to implement that into my files. Obviously, it didn't really work. I was sort of getting frustrated. I was sort of getting mad. So obviously, that was kind of a nightmare for me. So 39%. And then lastly, having to add and download certain tools like SFML, which is like software file media libraries, or CMake, in order to in order for the project to build properly. It's if I would have had known that, I feel like if I would have known that earlier, it would have been a lot easier to just go off of like and build the project and make the project a lot smoother. But obviously, because of my like short-sightedness and just understanding what I really needed to be doing, it was sort of just out of my reach and just like, oh, I wanted this now and stuff like that. Oh, or like I'm too impatient for now, and I'm just like, oh, well, crap. But other than that, this is pretty much 36% out of 100, and this is pretty much like the grading system for me on how much. Obviously, closest to 100 was a lot more tolerable, a lot more easier to understand, and then like the lowest score for 100% is just like unbearable. I couldn't really understand. It was just too hard for me to like wrap my mind around. But overall, the project was pretty interesting. And after this, I'm just going to show you my code and what I've done, and just to boot up the project. So I'll see you soon. All right, so this is pretty much the coding side of my game final. As you can see, with all these different, this is the game layer, or else the new main file. Um, it's pretty much just like making sure that everything is all nice and making sure that all the variables, all the libraries are working properly and everything is all in order, and making sure it's pretty much like the main, as you would call it. If you're first getting into C++ or whatever, if this is your first time coding, like whatever your main is, this is like obviously GameLayer.cpp. It's not called quote unquote the main, but this is the main file every every other file will go off of. So you have your game layer, you have your glad/glad header, you have your GLM, HPP, and then other sort of libraries to go off of. And with this, it's pretty much just like going, you have, this is pretty much include GL2D, which is pretty much a library or a custom library to go off of for 2D games. Obviously, game layer, 2D, and then the header for the game layer, and then we have a JavaScript file for the launch, a README. This is actually the file for the original creator of the game. I just left that in because of the fact that it's giving credit to what he's done, and it's pretty much giving me access to always look at the file and stuff like that, and the resources. And then the CMake list, it was his way of saying, okay, this is what I've added and this is what I've done, and it's just like checking everything to see what he's done, how many files it needs, and stuff like that. But I'm just gonna start doing I'm just gonna start launching the game. So this is the game that I had to make. Of course, it kind of sounds annoying from, I don't know, from a frontal perspective. But yeah, no, this is a video game that I had to make for my final. This is it's a flat 2D space shooter game. Kind of a little bit fast paced, but other than that, it's pretty fun. It's pretty simple, but like I said, the code itself very lucrative, very repetitive, and it's taxing, and it could be kind of frustrating if you don't have the right tools. But other than that, it works properly. I'm able to move around. I'm able to shoot. The enemy AI is able to move around independently and shoot and just sort of follow me until I die. And they spawn on their own. And then the tile set is pretty much just like a small or a large field, but with a small atmosphere, obviously space. And each time I die, I already have my health bar. So each time I get hit or each time I die, my health bar depletes and it resets, and everything resets each time I die. So it's pretty much just like that's pretty much the whole entire game. It's just how many can you kill until you sort of die, and of course my health bar sort of regens itself after a while, or instantly after I get hit. So that's pretty fun. But other than that, this is my final, and thanks for watching.